Hi YouTube, Maggie Beggett here. A little bit of a ranty vlog here, and the subject is disability. So, what Victor would call a laundry vlog, what I often call a waiting for my wife to come home vlog. And this is what I do when I've got a lot of free time. Anyway, so if I'm not looking at you, by the way, because I'm reading stuff out on my computer, and I'm sort of darting over to read. I've got a good memory, but I want to read some certain bits out. So I'm sorry for the light. I've got such a small apartment that it can't have no light. I need to buy a lampshade, really, a light so I can light the room better. But you're not really got to look at me. Just occasionally listen to me. By the way, the title, "We Deny Able-Bodied Civilization," is from a disability group called the Aoshiba no Kai in Japan, the Bluegrass, or of course they mean Greengrass Association, and it's from their sort of mission statement where they say it's a disability rights group. We deny ill-bodied civilization. We recognize that modern civilization has managed to sustain itself only by excluding us, people with cerebral palsy. We believe the creation of our own culture through our movement and daily life leads to the condemnation of modern civilization, and we act on this belief. Hence the title. Sorry, the title got you reading, one hopes, or watching, one hopes. So what's gone on? Well, a number of things gone on. Again, what's happened is there's been recently, in the last couple of days, an article in the Mainichi Shimbun about disabled people, and I'm going to read this out. I think 19 prefectures lack plan to train welfare workers to deal with behavioural disabilities. 19 prefectures have failed to heed central government recommendations to train welfare officers in handling people with major behavioural disabilities in fiscal year 2014, the Mainichi has discovered. These strong behavioural disabilities include frequent self-abuse or attacks on others, and most often seen in people with autism or serious mental disabilities. Recent research has shown that such individuals who have trouble expressing themselves tend to exhibit the problem behaviour when they are unable to make themselves understood. Although they are said to account for only 1% of people with mental disabilities, they apparently account for 10% of mentally disabled people who have been abused. At the Sodagara Welfare Centre in Chiba Prefecture, a facility for mentally disabled, abuse of residents by at least 15 staff members was primarily inflicted on those with serious behavioural disabilities. A 19-year-old resident, whose name, by the way, I'm reading off two amalgams of two different articles, you see. His name is Takayoshi Namakata. Takayoshi Namakata hit and beat up a 19-year-old resident who died after allegedly being kicked in the stomach by one of the staff members who had shown signs of this type of disability. The former employee accused in his death was quoted as telling authorities, "When the boy made some noise, I gave him a warning, but he did not listen to me, and my stress just peaked." The Chiba prefectural government has pointed to the workers' poor support skills as one of the cause behind the abuse. So the Japanese government has cut funding, in essence, for welfare programs. Although they're still expecting all the prefectures to sort of have support programs, and actually Shiga Prefecture and Chiba Prefecture have actually done this. They, off their own money and bat, as it were. They said we're going to do it anyway. But 19 prefectures, and I'll read the list out. Forgive my pronunciation: Hokkaido, Iwate, Akita, Yamagata, Fukushima, Ibaraki, Chiba, Tokyo, Kanagawa, Yamanashi, Aichi, Kyoto, Osaka, Nara, Okayama, Ehime, Kochi, Fukuoka, Nagasaki. They essentially now have no welfare program, at least no training program for their welfare officers who deal with behavioural disabilities. Now, fast forward a bit, as it were. You would think that would make a newspaper, and it made the English language Mainichi. You would think that some of the newspapers might find interest in that. You would be wrong, though. This has not appeared anywhere else. Why? Because apparently and this came out with a debate on social media I had with a journalist who, I've got to say, is great for having debated it and maybe even suggests it as an article he will write. He said there just isn't public interest in it. And I don't accept this, actually. I just really don't. I don't accept that there isn't a public interest in it. There have recently been stories about how Japan is apparently becoming a more racist country because of the footballer thing. The no Japanese banners at football matches. There's been stories about how Anne Frank books have been vandalised. And yet one might say that not being alive in mainland Europe of the 1940s, or being a member of an ethnic minority, that holds no interest for me as a reader. It does, obviously, because I'm a decent guy who likes to read. But you might say that. Why is that being thought of as a story, but not something about disability? That is my concern. That story isn't making, international press a little more, under the idea that we care about universal suffrage, if nothing else. So we do actually. I would assume that people with disabilities in Britain or in America or in any country would like to know what's going on here, under the idea of universal suffrage, or even forget about being about disability. Let me put it this way: one of the major world economies and democracies, which just recently, became a signatory to the UN Declaration of Human Rights, subchapter Rights for Disabled Persons. That country has no program to train its welfare officers in behavioural disabilities. Now, I think that's worthy of note. That's a line in someone's book that, by the way, this is going on. But apparently not. And I have noticed this about Japan, actually. When it comes to issues of basic media representation of people with disabilities, there is a lack of it. Take, for example, the recent case of the Japanese Beethoven Ford, as it's called. This guy who, was producing music, or saying he was, and was deaf, so hence the Beethoven accolade, as it were. But all his music was ghostwritten, basically. In that story, what was interesting is, if that had happened in Britain that fraud was by a British citizen, there would have been, let's say, an interview and just to find someone to talk about it with someone from a deaf group, saying, "Yeah, this is terrible. I'm deaf, and this is, representation from disabled people themselves on the stories that concern them. Just that they're the appropriate authorities, if nothing else. That didn't happen. I mean, even that story, which we might say again, it's a major fraud in the art world. There was a section in the newspaper, arts and music, that would be interested in that story. Didn't happen. So why are we interested in that, but we are interested in dead dolphins? Because dolphins are big readers of The Independent and The Guardian? I recently came up with the perfect headline. This headline would guarantee to be splashed across almost front pages of newspapers. Racist maid cafe worker has sex with dolphin after midnight whilst dancing. That's an amalgam with a perfect headline. What wouldn't make the news if you said maid cafe worker with a disability has sex with a disabled dolphin after midnight whilst dancing? That wouldn't be interesting, apparently. The other issue I've been thinking about is, did anyone notice the Paralympics on NHK? Probably not, because it wasn't really on. It had half an hour on NHKG and half an hour on NHKE, and allowing for repeats on demand. There was basically 14 hours over the 2 weeks. Japan, by the way, won 3 medals, Well, hey, pretty cool. But no, not on. I don't really have an ending to this other than just to say, I'm a bit angry, And I said, the only good news is, maybe it will finally appear in some newspaper. I don't know. I'm going to put a link to the articles from my blog below, actually. But so check it out. I said, don't bother listening to me, really. But yeah, bit angry, and I still say we have to. It comes down to what do we value, and I think we do value stories about disability in Japan. For example, I'm convinced that the man who vandalised those Anne Frank books has a learning disability or mental health issues. He's unemployed, 36, 35 rather. I just apparently had no motivation for the crime. People, even if they're racist reasons, have reasons, unless they have mental health issues, in which case they don't necessarily have reasons. Of course, he's not going to get any help now. There's no training. So, yeah, I'm just going to press stop here because it's long now. It's 11 minutes. Apologies. But just thought I'd get this rant out. Cheers. Bye.